Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Clock podcast with Steven Weinstock. I've been investing in real estate for over 20 years, started off with single family homes, and now I'm buying multifamily properties. And I recently launched my own real estate investment fund. This podcast is brought to you by my company, We Capital, and the Goethals Capital Fund, where we buy properties in cash. We lock in deep discounts. We eliminate the mortgage risk in year one, and we refinance later in order to scale, all without asking investors for more capital. This show is not about me. It's about operators, founders, and closers who are building real results in real time. Today, I'm joined by Michael Ealy, CEO of Nassau Investments and founder of the Big Deal Masterclass. Michael has completed over $400 million in real estate deals. He owns thousands of apartment units and hotels, and is also an educator, an author, and an international speaker. He's on a mission to teach others how to secure big deals, even without starting capital, and how to scale through smart partnerships and strategic value add improvements. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, I know we had some scheduling conflicts earlier, but I'm happy to have you on. Thank you
Yeah,
very
life
much.
is easy. Life is easy.
Michael, tell me a little about yourself. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so what you shared some of the things that we've done, the 400 million thousand of units, but the balance sheet really doesn't give the story. It wasn't always like that. I lost everything, and I wish I could say it was during the Great Recession, and it wasn't. It was right during 9/11, and I lost everything and became homeless, and I was couch surfing and ended up moving back home with my mom and dad. They painted my room pink and lavender. I guess they didn't expect me to move back home. And I had to start over. And from there, they went from paying my bills to I paid their bills till I paid their house off.
Oh, wow.
It was resurrection again. And it was quite a journey. They always say there's a vision between every person's vision and victory, there's a valley. And so at that point, I learned the lesson of life and transformation with wealth. And from there, man, I came back and now own 4 hotels. I just sold 2. I'm doing $120 million development in Sarasota, inclusive of hotel, condos, and parking garage.
Oh, wow.
So that's what we got going on.
Just to back up, you mentioned 9/11. Were you here in New York at the time?
No, I was not. Actually, my wife was.
Oh, wow.
She was working at American Express, actually, in one of the towers, and she didn't go to work that day. So she was my girlfriend at that time.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm recording here in Brooklyn, New York. I'm born and raised here, so I do remember that day pretty well. I was young. I was an adult, but I was young and definitely had quite an impact on me. Where were you during 9/11?
Man, I'll never forget. I pulled in that morning to my car wash. I owned a car wash, and all my workers wasn't doing nothing. I come in, what are you doing? And they was like, Mike, you gotta look at TV. A plane just crashed into one of the towers.
Wow.
And it was like, man, it was an accident. And then another one came, and it was like, oh, that's not an accident.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, man, literally kind of 2 things happened. Right before that, we had the Cincinnati race riots. So the city of Cincinnati shut down for about a month or 2. And then that was like in April of 2001. And then 5, 6 months later, you had 9/11 and the whole world shut down. And that's when I went under.
Wow.
So I remember that vividly.
So in 2001, you mentioned you owned a car wash. Were you in the real estate business at the time? Were you just
Yeah, that's how I got started, using those same strategies. I started off, my first deal was a 2-family. Literally, I went from a duplex to a millionaire, duplex to broke, then a millionaire. But I started off with a 2-family, owner finance. I got the person to finance $70,000. I brought $1,000 to the table. He financed my down payment for $2,000. Within 30 days, I got a tenant to move on the top floor. They paid me $500. I moved somebody in with me. They call that house hacking. I got a roommate. They paid $200. My mortgage was $700, and I was living rent free. And that was the beginning. And then I went to 2 4-families. So I went from living free to no car payment with my 2 4-families I bought. Then I got another 2-family that paid all my insurance. So like, you couldn't tell me nothing. Like, I thought I was balling at that time. And yeah, we spent big money, and I was only making $1,600 on the job. So
Were the second deals to the 4-family and the other 4 units, was that also done with creative financing?
it somewhat so it all started, not have his book with me, but you may remember him, the great Robert Allen. He's still around, and he's actually my coach and partner. And I happened to pick his book up and went to the library. I was so excited about making money. And at the time, junk bonds was the deal. And I never forget, I went to the bookshelf at the library and I pulled it off and it said $50,000 was the minimum investment. So I put that book right back on the shelf and I walked down and I saw Robert Allen's No Money Down. And I learned all these different techniques of using your 401k, a line of credit cards, you name it. I utilized that. And so I didn't have the down payment to buy those 2 4-families, but I knew I would at closing, because at closing, there's this thing of proration of taxes and proration of rents. And so I needed 3 or 4,000. So I went to my realtor and said, hey man, I got credit. I don't have cash, but I'm telling you, I can get this deal done and I can get you paid. I need to borrow your commission in advance. I'm going to pay you back at closing plus interest. And that's exactly what happened. At closing, I think I collected like $6,000, $7,000. I gave him 35. I think I borrowed 3,000 for a day, and I gave him back 3,500. And that's how I got in those 2 4-families. And literally, those changed my life.
Wow. Yeah, creative financing has definitely been one of my best friends early on. When I first started, and I've said this in plenty of my podcasts before, but I always ask about creative financing because I like how you brought it up. My first deal I bought was a single family home. It was $32,000. This was back in 2001.
Yeah, when you say those numbers, man, people are like, what are you talking about?
And just so you know, I got a mortgage for 90% LTV.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Back then, things were a little easier, if you remember, when it came to mortgages. And I put down 10% and closing costs, and it was about $5,000 or $6,000 out of pocket. And my goal was really to buy just one. But after 2 or 3 months, the numbers really started clicking. I'm paying down debt, paying down my mortgage, values are rising, tenant is paying everything. Things were great. And after 2 or 3 months, I started buying. I'm very familiar with Robert Allen and Carlton Sheets and all these guys who had great infomercials on TV back in the day. And I didn't have the money to buy the books, but I used to watch those infomercials literally left and right. And if you remember, they were like 45-minute commercials. And, I guess they would produce 2 or 3 different types or versions. I felt like I really got a huge education just from watching that. And the only way I was able to buy and scale was from creative financing, whether it was
100%
seller seconds, sometimes a seller first. And I've actually used seller financing on some of my larger multifamilies as well.
I still use these same strategies to the day. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-family or 500 unit. I'm still looking for the prorations of rent. I'm still looking for getting the credit back for repairs. I'm still looking for the seller to hold some paper as a second mortgage. Like, it's never going away.
When I look at property, one of my first questions I ask, whether it's the broker or the person bringing me the deal, how long does the seller own the property? Because if he owns it a long time, it means he's got equity and he could play ball and be creative and strategic. And you mentioned prorations. I remember plenty of times where my closing would get scheduled, and based on the time of the month, I would try to schedule it for the 6th or the 7th of the month.
100%.
This way, the rents were already collected, but then I would get it prorated for the month at the closing. I would be banking on the security deposits.
100%.
Yeah, definitely brings back memories, and creative financing is great and definitely helped me out, and I'm still using that. Let me dive in a little. You mentioned
Okay.
you're from Cincinnati. Are you still in Cincinnati?
Yeah, Cincinnati's home, but I am trying to make Florida my home. It's just the sunshine, the beaches, and the real estate. I just love it out there.
Yeah, you and everybody here in the Northeast wants to go down to Florida and make it their home, make it their business center, make it their corporate office for tax
Yeah, that's right.
purposes.
But Miami, I can't. I don't know if I can live in Miami. That Miami's too sexy, man. Like every time I go in there, I fall in love with Miami, and I get lost. So I think I just need to visit Miami.
How'd you get into multifamily? So you're dealing with 1 to 4s, I assume. A lot of people start out with 1 to 4s, a separate asset class, a little easier to digest, smaller numbers, a lot more lending product out there to buy them. How'd you get into the 5+ and larger?
Yeah. So really, it started for me with the multifamilies because simply I was trying to live free and have my bills taken care of. That's really it. Once I got 2 properties, about 3 properties, I was like, why stop? And then I think after I got to about 20 units, the car wash and everything fell apart. But then we started getting opportunities. That was really it. I ended up, they always say, even the dogs have to eat from the crumbs of the table. And I was at the table, brother. I was eating the crumbs. I ended up getting with one of the largest affordable housing LIHTC groups, which is low income housing tax credits. And they had a lot of properties they managed in DNF neighborhoods, which now completely transformed, gentrification, if they want to say that. And they gave me some opportunities. Like, Mike, you like managing properties? You want to get in multifamily? I was like, yeah. It's like, look, I got this 22 unit you can take. And it was like, just take it over. I was like, what do you mean? Like, just manage it. If you like it, buy it. And then I'm going to buy it back from you in a couple of years. And that was kind of one of the beginning of me getting my first 20, that was a 28 unit. Then they liked what I did because people were having problems managing it. I was just so creative. I did what they call guerrilla marketing back then. Social media wasn't really that big, or the internet, right? We were still using Craigslist, right? That was your main thing where I marketed for tenants. But where I was marketing to, they didn't have internet really. So I would go and put little tear-offs at all the different locations in that neighborhood. And I was creative. I would go to agencies to lease the building because I was like, man, nobody's going to live in this D plus. I'm saying plus as a give me. I was like, nobody wants these. I was buying in the pocket. And I was like, how am I going to get these rented? Because I don't want to deal with those type of tenants. And I found out a person, actually, I don't even want to say that, but she said, Mike, the easiest way is just go rent to agencies. And I can't remember her name. She was a neighbor. And that was the beginning of me being creative. I would find a property. I'll find a 10 unit that actually this group sold me. And then I would go to an agency and they'll lease my whole building. They would pay me my first month's rent and deposit, and they will handle all the maintenance. So I was really doing triple net leases on buildings.
Triple net leases on Class D plus, all right? It's pretty amazing. A lot of people stay away from D because it's very management intensive.
Oh man, D stands for dangerous. F stands you effed up. All right. And the reason I got into it, just watching an individual, older gentleman, he just took me around. I don't even know why, but I will say his properties were in the slums. They were like, I wouldn't want that. Like, these people were living fat, right? But he was making money. Like, he owned these properties free and clear in the hood, and they were paying him $300 or $400, and he had multiple tenants he was collecting from. And it was like, it didn't matter. Somebody always going to live there. I didn't care what it was. They were always going to live there, and he made money. I was like, maybe I should tap into that market. But I got into properties that were doing well. But honestly, and the real reason I got into multifamily really was a lot of praying and meditation and visualization. I want to give credit to God for that because I just went through a lot of hard times. And once I quit, because I was in love with money, I'm going to just be real with it. I was like, let me get this money. And once I changed that aspect and went into prayer and meditation and studied, I studied everything. Any religion, you name it, I studied it. And it was then when I connected with God and universe and frequency and light and tuning in, and then everything started coming to me. It was just like, this is where you go. And I would just follow it. And there's the multifamilies, man.
How did you make that first move outside of Cincinnati or outside of the area where you're living and were you able to manage day to day on the ground? Where was that location?
Yeah, that was a great question, man, because I was terrified to move out of the city and do deals. But the thing that did that was the Great Recession. And when I went broke, I realized that you can make a lot of money buying mortgage notes. And I bought a lot of non-performing notes that I bought all over. I bought a lot in Cleveland. I think I bought one in Florida. I bought a few in Kentucky. And I went to look at it one time, and that was it. And I was just collecting the check. That's it. I collected the check monthly. Like, I'll never forget my first one. The guy was in debt with PNC. I think it was Provident Bank at the time, but it was PNC. He owed like $120,000. The rates changed on him. And he was like, I can't afford it. And I was like, well, can you afford? Well, let me tell you this, though. I bought that for pennies on the dollar. I bought that note for $18,000. He owed $128,000.
Wow.
I said, I got him on the phone. I said, what can you afford? He said, man, I was paying $1,200 a month. And then when it jumped up to $1,300, I couldn't do it anymore. I said, what can you do? He said, man, I'm really comfortable at $1,150. I said, $1,150? I said, yeah. I said, cool. Your new mortgage payment is $1,000 a month. And he locked in. I made $40,000, $50,000. I kept that for years. I still got a note now I bought for $9,000. He owned $80,000. I did the same conversation. Matter of fact, when I bought the note, I lived in Cincinnati. I said, where do you like to go? He said, man, after work, I like to go to this bar. I met him at his favorite bar. I sat down with him. I said the same thing. How much can you afford? Man, it jumped up to $1,100. I said, what can you do? He said, man, $1,000 would be good. I said, great. Your new mortgage is $875. And that's what I collect to this day.
Were you buying these, I guess, pre-foreclosure, right? Not after.
I was buying, one was in pre-foreclosure. But back then, when the recession came, so many big hedge funds were buying pools of notes. They was letting us cherry pick. So they was letting these small guys just, hey, man, I can do that. That's my part of town. And that's what got me start moving outside. Now, I'm telling you about all the good ones. I did pick up 2 bad ones in Cleveland, but they wasn't even worth, like, I made so much money off those other ones. It was like a write-off. I only paid like $3,000 for them. I tried to give it to her, and she kept filing bankruptcy.
I was also involved in the notes business for a while, not necessarily non-performing notes, but I would do a lot of second mortgages. Mm-hmm. At first, I used to go down to the county clerk's office, this before there was online.
Yeah.
And I would look through all the records, and I would look for anything that didn't say Bank of America.
That's right.
I would look for John Smith.
That's right.
And I would reach out, and I would basically ask them if they were looking to sell it. A lot of times, the second position notes were like with family members. No, not my family. They were helping out a relative or whatever it was.
That's right.
And they were willing to sell it, sometimes 60, 70 cents on a dollar. And they were happy to sell it because they would get money up front instead of waiting 5 years for it. And I was buying small ones. I was buying $10,000, $12,000 deals. I would get them a little cheaper, and they were performing. And the lender, so to speak, cashed out. And here I was buying notes. And that was the first time I was really raising money. I would offer a small percent to my investor. I would keep a point or two on top, and I would actually keep the spread. So if I was buying it for $8,500 and it was a $10,000 note, I would get that on the payoff.
That's right.
After a while, I actually met somebody. They called him the Hot Tub King. And what he did was he would finance people's hot tubs. Okay. These hot tubs cost about $3,500. He was doing it out in Seattle or whatever it was. And he hooked up with a hot tub seller or a hot tub manufacturer. And For them to sell it easier, they offered financing to their customers. But instead of a regular consumer finance, they did it as a second lien on the property. And let's say it was a $3,000 tub. So he was able to sell it, the manufacturer was able to sell it all day long, so to speak. And he would come to the lender and the investor would offer, let's say, $2,800 for it. And now he owned this $3,000 note and 8, 9, 12%, whatever it was, paid off over a few year period. And he made sure that there was always enough protected equity. So the house was worth, let's say, 275. The homeowner only owed 130, adding a $3,000 note on top.
That's minor.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
I took that idea and I hooked up with a swimming pool manufacturer or a swimming pool installer, and basically did the same thing. And I financed quite a few swimming pools for people. Yeah, for people in New Jersey. So these swimming pools were anywhere from $8,000 up to, let's say, $30,000, $40,000. And at the same time, the swimming pool would add value to the asset itself. And I always made sure there was protective equity. And if this was a $30,000 pool, I would offer, or I would pay, let's say, $26,000 straight to the pool installer. And here I had a note for $30,000 with, let's say, a 10% interest rate. And really did that for a long time. And after managing Class D property or Class C property for a while, I really wanted to stay away from the management business. So I started doing that. Eventually, I pivoted back towards ownership.
Now, when you say that now, how did you transition because now, like, a lot of people are not tying it to the property. That was amazing. Like, I think I would have did those type of deals as well.
Yeah, most of the time, if you look at, you want to finance air conditioners or whatever it is, for the most part, they are selling it to a bank, like a Citibank or Citi Cards, and they're really just a consumer finance. So there's no lien, there's no asset. They're basing it on your credit, but at the same time, there's sometimes the interest rate would be 20% or whatever a credit card is. So here I was structuring it literally as a second lien. Some counties as like a UCC lien or UC lien, like a contractor's lien. And we set it up as a second mortgage. It was just a second on top of a first. Their credit was important, but it wasn't as important. I cared more about their equity that they had.
100.
And to make sure that they were up to date with their current mortgage, with their first mortgage. And every once in a while, I did get letters in the mail saying John Smith is late with their payments or notifying all the lien holders. There was one deal where I was able to come in and they were going to foreclose on the first, even though the guy was still paying me. They basically offered it to me, I guess, as a first right of refusal. And I was able to come in and purchase the note. I don't get wiped out, because otherwise they would have foreclosed. They would have sold it at auction and I would get wiped out. So I did do that. It was a little more money than I had. I was able to work it out to save my swimming pool finance. But I ended up making some money on the back end. But that was one of the scary moments I had. But
yeah, but you always get one.
But it worked out. When did you start, I guess, Nassau Investments? Were you using this vehicle the entire time? Or is this something
I started investing in real estate in 1999, but it wasn't until I started Nassau Investments 2006. 2001, literally, I started buying in 1999. And by 2001, I started going broke. And then it was 2003, I started making my moves back. I became a realtor. And what happened? I became a realtor and I ended up saying, look, I'm ready to get back in the game, but I didn't have any money. So I ended up reaching out to some of my college buddies. Look, man, I can make you some money. And so I won't say I did it for free, but I didn't take any equity. I did it as a realtor fee. I did it as construction management. And then I sold the property and then I played the property manager. So I wore all the hats. And so I would find these guys deals where we were finding stuff for $35,000, put $5,000 into it. I'll pull a lease option land contract where they paying like $900 and they were buying it back for $65,000. So like I did 2 deals like that, maybe 3 deals back to back where they were successful. I walked away with about $5,000 from the deal. They walked away with $30,000, $20,000, $30,000 a deal. I was like, I'm ready. And then I just started growing from there.
I remember when I sold some property, I was selling some two-family homes in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and I wanted to sell it faster, and I wanted to sell it for a higher price.
That's right.
And back then, this was a classified ads in the newspaper. And I
I don't know if
remember,
they're ready for the classifieds, man. That's where we got all the deals.
and I used to put down no money down, get into your house buy the house for $2,000 or whatever it was. And basically, my goal was to, if there was an identical house selling for 130,000, I would try to sell mine for 150.
100.
I would tell the potential buyer, you go out, you get a mortgage as much as possible. Back then, the mortgage is a little easier. You're able to get sometimes 95% LTV. They would do like an 80 and a 15, if you remember those days.
Back then, you could tell the appraiser what you wanted to be valued.
Well, that's a separate story when we're offline. But yeah, exactly. They blamed the appraisers for the '08 financial crisis. But I would be able to sell these properties, and these people would come in with very little money down, and I would hold the second position loan. Sometimes I would ask for a few dollars up front, and I was able to sell at a high rate. And sometimes they would offer me the keys a year or two later if they couldn't make the payments. But for the most part, things worked out.
No, I still got a few of those. But I'm not mad. Sometimes a little disappointed, but I got one of my first houses, two of my first houses, sold them both on land contracts. I still own them. They never got the loan, and I've been like, literally, I bought these houses for $18,000. They're now worth $70,000 to $100,000 each, probably $150,000. I got another one. I've been trying to sell it to the guy since 2019. I just went up on his rent because I don't even want to deal with it. The house is worth $150,000. I would love for him to give it back to me. I could put him out, but that's not what I'm looking for. I like, look, man, your payment was $700. I finally bumped them to $900. And I was like, look, I'm going to get a line of credit on the house. I'm going to go do deals. So you can stay as long as you want. But if you want to buy it, you're going to have to pay more. You know, that's just the name of the game.
Yeah, there's so many creative ways to buy real estate. I used to buy stuff with a lease option, sometimes a master lease with some money down. Let's say I would offer, let's say, a $3,000 a month for a master lease on a 2 or 3 unit house. Mm-hmm. And $500 of it would go towards the down payment or towards equity for when I close.
Now, why'd you do a master lease versus a lease option?
So I think a lease option and a master lease is similar. I think it's really just depends on where you're doing it and what they call it. A master lease, I know you're able to get a title company to record it. This way, the seller can't go ahead and sell the property from under you. We would sign two things. We would sign a master lease, and we would also sell a regular sales contract with a very extended closing. And we would record those at the county clerk's office so that if the seller was trying to sell it or refinance, they would ping me. I would get pinged, so to speak, and be able to stop it or, deal with it at the time. I never really had that issue where something.
Interesting you said that, because I was thinking, so like land contract. So one reason a lot of people, at least in Hamilton County of Cincinnati, don't do a lease option, they made it a law that if somebody puts more than $2,000 down, they got to report it or something like that. They pushed away from that. But let me ask you, the land contracts, I learned that my first one, they always put like a quick claim deed in place in case, for both people, but sometimes they put a quick claim in place. So if the seller were to default, and as long as the person's paying, he can go to court or whatever and take control of the property. What do they have for master lease? Because I know master lease, I get it, but I never thought of it doing a single family. When I'm doing master lease, I'm always thinking of some commercial building.
Yeah, so the master lease was basically the same thing. It's basically me telling the seller that I'm going to handle everything. I'm handling maintenance. I'm handling repairs. If the roof falls off, I will pay for it. But we would record this lease at the county clerk's office. So I'm protecting myself. Typically, when I do it, at first when I started doing it, the person owned the property free and clear. I was a little apprehensive about doing it at times when the person had a mortgage. Eventually, my risk profile expanded where I would be okay if the person had a mortgage to still do a similar deal. I would just be on top of, I would ask for the mortgage statement every single month throughout the process, make sure that it's getting paid with the money that I'm giving him, so to speak. But again, lease options, rent to own, I've done all of it. They're mostly, a lot of it is similar. Just as time went on and different title companies, different lawyers I dealt with, they taught me how to, I guess, protect myself better over time, especially when it comes to putting a lien on the property, etc. Sometimes we would just put a second position lien with just a balloon payment, artificial amount.
Yeah,
And if the person wanted to refinance, I would just sign off, or when it was time
that's right.
to buy it, I would sign off, and not necessarily a payment had to be made, but just this way I'm in the know at all times, and all this money that I'm paying him every month doesn't get taken from out under me, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%.
Tell me about Big Deal Masterclass. I know you're teaching people how to raise money, find off market deals, do no money down investing. Which of these topics do people really gravitate towards the most when you're teaching people?
It's funny. Either they want to know how to analyze the deal or how to raise capital. Those are top two things. And for me, analyzing is pretty simple. Now, you can make it as complex as you want. The one thing I teach people is, look, you don't have to spend 3 days analyzing a deal. Right? You don't have to even visit the property. You visit the property after you do some numbers. And I just use a basic 50-50 expense ratio. 50% goes to expenses, 50% goes to NOI. That's a very conservative approach. I know with inflation, I'm starting to push more to 60-40. And the main thing you need to know is the number of units, the average rent, and what's the cap rate. You got those three numbers, now you're cooking with hot grease, man. Like, you're cooking on the stove there. And from that, like, literally in a minute or less, I tell somebody if it's a deal or not. Or I use, for those who don't know, like, where you get the cap rate, you can go to CoStar, you can go to caprateindex.com. If you don't know where to get the rents, you can go to Rent-A-Meter. I think they do the first couple for free. And you just find out what the rents are in those areas, and you put your numbers together. And that was one of the big things. And once they learned that, they was like, oh, snap, they just flying through deals. Because naturally, in this market, maybe not this market, but when it was a seller's market or buyer's market, they overcharging. And I just simply, hey, my numbers don't match, help me out. Instead of calling you're not the brightest in the bunch here, they simply say, hey, maybe I'm missing something. Can you help me out? How did you come up with these numbers? And then my one thing for raising capital is for people that were beginning, because they was like, I don't even know where to start. I was like, just start with this one question. Do you know anybody that would have liked to make 10 to 14% on their money? That's it. And they're going to say one of three things. No. So go, and quite frankly, I challenge you to go for no. 2, they say no again, but I do have a friend that has money. Let me introduce you. Or yes. That's it. So if you're aware of that, and that's all I'm going to say, and I had people start doing that. People were raising 100 grand, 200 grand, or they'll be on Twitter. All she did was talk about a deal, and somebody offered her to lend her $100,000.
Yeah, raising capital is probably the hardest these days than it's been in quite some time. At this point in my career, I have the deals, I have the network, I have the office. Raising capital is probably the toughest part of my day. A lot of investors are hurting. A lot of people don't have necessarily disposable income, whether it's inflation, et cetera. And some investors, or what I call mom and pop investors, they like to invest in shiny objects. And if you remember back by the days of 9/11, everyone was day trading or getting involved in day trading,
That's right.
or buying pets.com, IPO and stuff like that. For a long time, it was real estate. I know during COVID, everybody was on Robinhood buying crypto. And the real estate market got a little tough for the last couple of years. A lot of deals that were purchased in maybe late 21 or early 22 are hurting a little, or if they're not hurting, they've been delayed. People had a 2 or 3 year horizon. I've had that myself. I purchased a deal early 22, told investors that we should be rocking and rolling in 24, 36 months. Rates change. lending
Man,
markets change. And next thing you
man.
know, I got to tell investors, you're still in the deal. Thank God that equity values are up, but I can't refinance and pay you off just yet. But
No,
it
that's
happens. It happens. And it hurts with raising funds. I
yeah,
deal with that on a regular
yeah.
basis.
Shoot, forget hurt to raise it. It hurts my feelings.
How'd you get into hotels?
I failed my way into hotels. I never forget there was an opportunity to respond to an RPO. The University of Cincinnati wanted to develop this land right in front of the university. And so the university was going to be my partner. We were going to do an $80 million project. And I went to a guy I knew that owned the hotel, and he owned about 1 million square feet of commercial space. And he almost owned all of it free and clear. Like he's owned it that long. And I said, hey, man, they want to develop right here in Uptown in Coreyville, prime spot. We should do some office buildings. And he's like, no, we're going to build a hotel and apartment building. And I was like, okay. And that was the beginning of it. And fortunately, it was a good learning lesson. Unfortunately, we didn't move forward with the project. A lot of moving parts. And I don't know if I'm grateful of it or not, but if I would have came out of the ground, I would have went right into COVID as soon as I opened.
You own a small retail strip in right outside of Staten Island, but it's in New Jersey. This tenant was a check cashing store, and he owned like 4 or 5 check cashing stores. And I remember when I purchased the property, I was speaking to him, and he said, this is really on autopilot. This is a turnkey business. I'm really in the motel business, like in the Carolinas, and that's what I'm busy with. He calls me up one day, and he says, I got to break my lease. I'm leaving everything in the store. So there's a big safe there. It's empty, but there's bulletproof glass all over. It's all ready to be re-rented again. But I'm just losing my shirt over here with some of these hotels. And that's what my focus is. And he introduced me to hotels because I used to talk to him a lot. It scared me a little with hotels. The hotels you're investing in, do these have a corporate flag?
Yeah. So I got a Marriott Courtyard I own now in Columbus, Ohio. I own Home 2 Suites in El Reno, Oklahoma. I just sold my Staybridge in Fishers, Indiana, and I just sold my Hampton Inn in Scottsburg, Indiana. Now, let me tell you something. Hotels are sexy. Hotels kick out tons of cash. Hotels give you major write-offs. They're better than having a self-directed IRA. If you buy a hotel right, you're not going to pay any federal taxes. I got multiple people that I know when I first started, they were making $5 million a year. Like they wrote that on their taxes. They paid no federal taxes because you got so much depreciation, so much write-offs with the hotels. And especially these last couple of years, we have bonus depreciation, which now Trump brought back even more. So that's a big win. But hotels, it's a lot of moving parts. And if you didn't learn from the ground up, or you have very savvy people that you trust and you can work together and that's real, you'll get eaten alive because there's some really nice sharks in the hotel game. But once you learn the business, they can't tell you nothing. And I had some sharks in my water and we got rid of them. And as soon as I did that, income value, everything jumped up and we sold our first hotel and we netted out like over 6-7 million.
Wow.
Where we should have netted 10 million. Just to tell you, that was a great deal. But even through that pain, we made a lot of money. But then I had one in El Reno, Oklahoma. It's doing fine. It's a leader in the market, but I learned markets because sometimes you got to have growth. And if you're in a rural area that's not growing, your hotel's not going to grow. And so therefore your ADR / your daily rate, we call it monthly rent. When hotels, they call it a daily rate. If that's not growing, you're not going to exit out for more than what you paid for. So that's the only tough thing. And hotels are based on the economy. So if the economy's great, oh man, break out the champagne, brother. Because every night's a party. But when the market's down, woo-wee, it's a roller coaster.
When you have a hotel with a corporate flag, You're putting a Marriott label or a Hilton label or some of their other sub labels that they have, like you mentioned, a Courtyard, a Residence Inn, or something like that. You are relying on Hilton.com or
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. When you buy a brand, what you're really doing is buying their reservation system, right? When you buy a franchise, you're buying their system. You're buying brand loyalty. And so typically for your hotel revenue, typically that brand's going to bring in 47 to 50% of your revenue. So just them alone should keep you alive. And naturally there's location, but then the other part is your sales. You got your good salesperson. They call them a sales director. You get a good sales director and a good GM. I know some people don't understand it, but your hotel can be sold out almost every night.
when you say a sales director, you're talking about companies that need to get 30 rooms for their construction crew, or you're talking about ballrooms that need to be sold for
100%. You got one sales director that their job is to put heads in beds, and they're talking to the civil center. They're going out to businesses. They're responding to RFPs. They're responding to items that they send from the brand, and they get heads in bed. Let me tell you something. I had to go through, and I was a novice, but I ended up going through one management company, probably 4 GMs and 4 salespeople till I got the right one. I share that for one, don't be afraid to fire somebody. That's number one. Don't let them, because if not, they're going to take you down. I like my boat to float in water, right? And I'll walk on water if I can, but I'd like to float. It'll probably be better. And when we did that, man, like my hotel's been like 80% occupied. When we got the right sales team in El Reno, I went from, because I was fussing about it, we were at 70%. I went to 97%. We ended up landing like 2 contracts, and at an 86-room hotel, they booked 50. At my Hampton Inn, I was 98% occupied for 10 months. We landed 2 contracts, and they basically booked up. So I put it like this, on any given day, I'll sell 30 rooms. Any given day. They came in and booked 60 of my rooms for 11 months. So I was just selling out every night. So that's how important. But a lot of people don't look at it like that. A lot of hotelers you talk to will just put it on orbits and what they call OTAs, and we'll let them sell it. No, quit letting your sales director just sit at their desk answering phone calls. Get out there. I like to call it parking lot pimping. Get out there, drive them parking lots, and go get that bread.
Before we go, you mentioned earlier that you're working on a deal. I saw this online as well. You're working on some deal in Sarasota. Am I correct?
That's right.
I think it was called Soda, SOTA.
Yes, the soda.
Tell me about that. Tell my audience about that.
Yeah, that's my first large development. Really, I fell in love with it. I went down to Florida, and the hotel group I was working with, they showed me 2 properties, and I really wanted this one. It was down in Florida outside of Tampa. I can't remember. It was something, Red Beach. I think it was Red Beach, right on the water. But it was just too much paperwork to deal with, and no guarantees that if we put money down, we would still get the property. I was like, that's too risky. So then I found this in Sarasota. It's prime downtown. I saw Sarasota growing. Like, to me, this is a project, I don't care what we spend on it. It's going to be like an NFL team. Like, it's going to be America's hotel. That's how I felt about it. And ever since I've started, like, the value just shot up. When I first looked at the deal, condos were selling for $600 to $700 a square foot. I'm selling the condos now for $1,000 a square foot. By the time I come out of the ground, it'll be 12 to 13. The hotel was at 197 to 215. I just got an updated feasibility study. They're saying when I come out of the ground, we'll be at 300 to 400 a night.
Wow.
And I saw it. The only thing I didn't see was COVID and inflation. I did not see that. Literally, that's what slowed the project down. But finally, we're getting this out of the ground. I got to get a little more creative. And it's this beautiful project. 120 key hotel. Actually, I'm gonna end up having 2 floors of condo hotel. And what that is, literally, I'm selling some of the hotel room and some of the suites off to individual owners. So just think of it as an Airbnb, but in a hotel. We'll manage it. They get to stay there. And then I'm selling some other condos. So what's so beautiful about that, I'll sell those condo hotels and the other condos. This project is a $130 million project. I'll end up selling $100 million worth of condos. And then I'm only going to have debt, probably about $15 million left on the deal. And the hotel will be worth $60 million when we're done.
So that actually reminds me of how I got into real estate. So 2001, I'm visiting Miami Beach. I'm sitting in a pool, a hot tub with a couple of friends, swimming pool by the Fontainebleau Hotel. The Fontainebleau at the time was putting up those 2 towers that they have for condos. And I'm not sure if it was the first or the second one. I think it might have been the first. And at the time, they were advertising these 1-bedroom hotel rooms / condos for about $400,000. And I remember sitting with a friend and we're looking at the construction going on. And we said, wow, imagine putting down maybe 20% and we get a hotel room whenever we want. And when we're not there, they could rent it out and share with us in the revenue. And we were like gung ho. We said, when we get back, put together some money and buy one of these rooms. And when we got back, the rest of my friends just went back to real life and said, whatever, Steve. So I remember I was calling all of them and I said, no, we got to do something. We got to do something. Finally, one of my friends said, speak to this guy who I know. He's a large investor. He's based out of New Jersey. He owns like 100 single family homes. It's free and clear. This guy was a real investor, a real mentor to me. And he basically said to me, listen, those deals are good, but it's not in my wheelhouse. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to advise you. If you told me you're worth millions of dollars, I would say for sure buy it. If you're asking me advice, go find, what I do. I buy 1 to 4s, go find one, figure out how to buy it, figure out how to do the down payment. And that's when I pivoted away from the Fontainebleau Hotel to the mean streets of Trenton, New Jersey. And I bought my first house.
Okay.
Yeah. $32,000 for $32,500 for my first single family home. But that's how I got into it, is because of these hotel suites, so to speak. So when you mentioned the story or this plant, it definitely reminded me. I think these apartments now in the Fontainebleau are worth over $2 million. It's not. But
yeah, we always got the one we miss, man.
You know what it is? Every time I look at real estate, it's always too expensive. It's always at the highest amount that maybe somebody would be willing to pay. But you fast forward 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, it's always, wow, I should have bought it. Every house I buy where I live, I'm married, I have a bunch of kids. I'm on my 3rd house since we're married. We were able to upgrade, thank God. And every time I sold one, I'm always upset because I passed by, even though I upgraded, that house is like double what I paid for it. And I always say to myself, oh, I should have kept it. Luckily, I take the money, I'm doing good things with it. So it's not like I'm going out and buying a Porsche. But for me, the hardest part of real estate sometimes is the purchase, getting it under my belt. And I always think, should I really sell it, or should I just figure out another way to come up with the money to buy something else? Yeah, every once in a while I have to sell something to move into something larger, so to speak. But it always bothers me to drive by a property I used to own and see it worth more than what I sold it for.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's what I liked about appreciating states, Florida, Texas, New York. We didn't have that in Cincinnati. Our appreciation rate is more 2-3%. Yeah. Where you guys are, y'all 6-8%. You may even see 10% in a year. And so we didn't do it. Matter of fact, I go back and give them credit, but one of the other reasons we got into multifamily, I didn't really know the nice neighborhoods, the A and B. I don't know anybody. I was like, who am I going to rent it to if I can't sell it? And because I knew the D and F neighborhoods, the only way to really make money in Cincinnati, we, instead of letting it appreciate, we had to force appreciation, meaning renovate it. And the only way you got big money was in multifamilies. Whereas my buddies in California, he just happens to buy a house for $900,000 or $1 million near Google. And He rents the rest of the rooms out. And then next thing you know, he sells it 2-3 years later for $2-3 million. And now he's like, hey, Mike, I got some money. I'll fund your deal.
Yeah, so I buy, just a little about me, I buy the 1-4s, so to speak, right outside of New York City. So I'm really getting that appreciation. It's in New Jersey, but it's right outside the city. So I'm getting that appreciation. Things I bought for 200,000, 2 years later, they're worth like 350. 10 years later, they're worth 900. But
now, are you cash flowing, or you get small? Because I know you got higher rents, but you pay a little more.
So again, when I first started 20 years ago, I wasn't cash flowing at all, especially if I was doing a seller second. You know, the payoff schedule was, let's say, over a 3 or 4 year period. So even though, let's say, it was $100,000 house, the 80,000, that was over a 30-year period. That was over a 30-year loan. But the 20,000, that was over a 3-year period. So that loan payment for the 20,000 was either more or just about the same amount as the 80%. So a lot of times I would buy something and I was either just breaking even or maybe cash flowing $50 a month, or sometimes I'd be out of pocket 50, $100. And I calculated that going in where, okay, I'm covered with nothing, but I have 5,000 in my bank account to cover this the next couple of years. But as soon as that second position was paid off, I don't know, it was like a big weight off my shoulder. Okay, all of a sudden, like from 1 month to the next, I'm like majorly cash flowing. These days, when I buy the 1-4s in New Jersey, I'm typically buying them in cash. I'm typically making sure I really get a phenomenal deal, but the appreciation is great. But yeah, you're correct. If I was getting the typical 75% loan, it would be really neck and neck as far as the cash flow. I always say that the first 5 years of owning real estate is the toughest because your purchase price is here, your rents are here, and you're really just like one bad boiler, one bad issue for having trouble. But if you can get to year 5, your price is still the same. Hopefully your payments are the same, but your rents moved up a little. And once you get to year 5, you're doing well. Like from year 5 to 15, you're like making money. And I always say, if you own it more than 15 years, that's where the wealth comes in.
100.
It's very tough to own a property for 15 years just because as investors, you're always in and out of stuff and you're always making things and moving. But
that's one thing I loved about New York and people in Cali. I was like, man, there's no reason you guys won't be millionaires in 5 years if you just buy one house or 1 2-family or 4-family a year, because all of those in 5 years, like, basically doubled. I'll never forget, that was one mistake that I made. I was dating her at the time. She wanted to buy a 2-family, and I just didn't understand the market. Now, in Maplewood, New Jersey,
good market.
Okay, could have bought a 2-family for $112,000. This was somewhere around 2006, 7, somewhere around there. And I was like, dude, your taxes are like more than your house. It was like 10,000 in taxes, or I don't know, something crazy. And dude, I never forget when she moved, the house was worth like 350, 400,000. I was like, yeah, don't listen to me again.
Yeah, New Jersey as a state, I think has the highest aggregate of property. The property tax is the highest as a state. I remember buying investment properties. Let's say, just to give an example, I bought something in, let's say, 2018. I paid I bought it in cash, so I got a deal. But I paid, let's say, 200,000 for a 2-family. It was probably worth about 250, but the taxes were like 14,000, and that was more than my house in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, my house, it's $1 million plus, and the taxes up until a few years ago, New York City's property tax was not that much. It was only the last couple of years when the New York City taxes really skyrocketed. We can blame that on the few mayors that we had. And if you're following some politics, we're about to get a new mayor, which a lot of people are afraid of. But we'll save that for a different podcast, different discussion. Michael, it was really great. Just tell me, what do you do for fun? You're watching Netflix, you're surfing, you're traveling. What do you do?
So my love is going to Miami. And because I get a discount for my Marriott pass, I love to stay at the Ritz, not the Ritz, but the St. Regis in Belle Harbor. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. And I'll rent a boat, I'll rent a yacht, and I'll have my closest friends or family with me. And that's like my dream to do on a regular basis. And that's why I'm doing that in Sarasota. And my second thing is working out, praying and meditating. That's my place, man. I'm in heaven every day, man. So that's what I do, and watching my kids. And I think I'm retired from coaching my kids. I do train them a little bit, but I love coaching football. But if you got me doing any of those things, man, life is amazing, man.
Michael, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate it. Tell our audience, I'll put it in the show notes. Tell our audience how they could reach you, what your phone number is, what your email address is, whatever you want to share. Tell everybody, and I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, you can find me anywhere on the social media, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Mike Ealy, Michael Ealy, NassauInvest.com. You can find me there. I'm easy to find. That's EALY. And if you see the other Mike, that's my cousin. He's an actor, but I'm the real Mike Ealy.
You know something? When I saw your name, I've heard of that actor. I've seen him before. I'm trying to think what movies or what shows, but I've seen him a few times.
Oh yeah, he's oh man, Steve Harvey movie, real man. I can't remember.
Yeah, no, I've seen it, but he's been around a while, right?
He's done plenty of shows.
Wow, so he's the first cousin, I guess?
Second cousin. His grandfather is my great uncle. So my grandfather, his brother are related. His grandfather and my grandfather were brothers. And then he had a daughter. And then the daughter, which is my first cousin, not even my first, I don't know. That's my dad's first cousin. And then he's the next one.
Got it. So I guess he's your second cousin.
Yeah. So we've been hanging for a long time, known each other for years. So.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I saw the name. I saw it in a double take. But
Yeah,
very cool.
I'm the good looking one though, okay? Just remember that.
Yeah, exactly. You also have a book I saw. What's the title of the book?
Yeah, I got a book. No, I got a book, but we call it From Broke to Million.
All right.
That was my first book where I actually teach people how to buy real estate. I talk about my struggles and how I overcame them. And then I show people in the book, I teach them how to do it.
Is that book available anywhere for sale?
Yeah, go to FromBrokeToMillions.com. Okay. And if you subscribe, just go to FromBrokeToMillions.com. Get the book. And if not, reach out to my page. Say, Mike, get me a book. I may send you an audio. I don't know. Just for watching this podcast, I'll send you my audio book.
All right. Michael, thank you very much for joining. This is another episode of the Wealth Clock podcast. It's Steven Weinstock. Make sure to share it, like it, subscribe, whatever it takes to spread our show so more people can watch and enjoy it. Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.